Hello, everyone, and welcome to PRT, Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me is...
Mushu. It's Tony. I'm back.
Everybody's like, oh... We threw everybody a curve because they thought that Sal was going to be back, but that was a pre-recorded interview.
Yeah, that was an old interview.
That was an old interview from way back in the summer.
Yeah, that we just needed to get out, so...
Yeah, and we need to get out, and we have a couple others that we need to do that are going to be with Sal. I don't know an ETA on Sal's return, if at all, honestly. All he's told me is that he's dealing with a lot of stuff, and he can't, just doesn't have time. Doesn't have time to do it.
Yeah, I mean...
And so...
Hopefully he can, finish whatever he needs to and get back to us if he wants to.
Well, actually, folks, he's a high school kid. He's got to graduate high school.
It's a secret.
And, yeah, I know. But he's got a really, really old man's voice. And so his secret identity has to be safe with us. And now we just blurted it out.
Yeah, we make up a lot of stuff about him, about being in Iraq and all. It's just his,
Stories.
Just
stories. Backstories. He's really a 17-year-old kid with pimples all over his face.
Yeah, he came to us with like a packet of like, this is my character and this is who I am.
This is a Dungeons and Dragons type deal. I believe Officer Clark could relate to that.
He has 18 in intelligence and 15 in strength or something like that.
Yeah. We got a guy that's
2 in agility.
Who's a big Dungeons and Dragons guy that works for us. But anyway, tonight we have a show. We're here.
Yeah, isn't this I'm excited about this one because you told me a little bit about it, and I've been waiting.
Yeah, I did, but we've been talking about this one for a while, and we've been because folks, as you know, I collect threads. I collect blue threads, red threads, green threads, and then I make a nice jacket. Now, seriously, what we do is we find like I'll file them under flying humanoids, Dogman, Bigfoot.
Just put them in the folder.
Yeah, you just put them all in the folder, and eventually you start to go back and read through them, and you're like, wow, this is interesting. These are very similar accounts. Well, I'm going to do one that's a location today. One that's a location. Everybody's heard of it. It's the city where what is done there stays there. That's what they call it. City. They call it the city of...
I was seeing where you're going with there. I was like, I know it's been called the city of sin.
Yeah. They call it because it's gambling and whatever. And, which nowadays, that's not even the worst sin. It's like, I think there's things going on a lot worse. But back in the day, it was founded by Bugsy Siegel, I believe. And folks, don't kill me. I think that's correct. I think it's who it was. Yeah, it was Bugsy Siegel. I was going to say Bugs Moran. That's not correct. Bugsy Siegel was the guy, and it was the brainchild of a gangster who wanted to legalize something that was always illegal. And they managed to find a place in the middle of nowhere.
It's the only way you can do it.
Yep, and they built a city where you could have showgirls and gambling all hours and drinking all hours. And because back in the old days, it was like pretty commonplace. You could go anywhere. You could go to South Dakota. And that, like where Wild Bill Hickok used to hang out in the Black Hills, and they had gambling there. They had gambling anywhere you went, and it was legal because it was in the territories. But then eventually, everything became states and became more controlled, and gambling was pretty much you couldn't do it. And so Las Vegas it was legal, and I think at one time, I believe this is correct. There's only 2 places that were gambling was legal. I think it was that in Atlantic City. And if anybody's ever seen Boardwalk Empire, it's a great show. It talks about the early days of Atlantic City and the prohibition, the bootlegging, Al Capone, and what's his name? What's that guy's name?
I haven't seen the show.
Lucky Luciano.
I've seen some of it, but I haven't seen a lot of it. And it's from what I've seen, it's a great show. It really I just don't have the time for it because it captures you in, and you have to sit there and really like binge.
You got to pay attention. Yeah, it's like Sopranos, but like from the 1920s, and it's Steve Buscemi. Mark Wahlberg is the producer. It's pretty good. And then you got he plays a guy named Nucky Thompson, which is a caricature based off of Lucky Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
And then Lucky Luciano was one of the gangsters, and then there's Al Capone and a bunch of. It's all about the early days of those gangsters. And
Capone is cool too.
Yeah, and then they would ship liquor in from the beach there, from other places like Ireland, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and they would bring it in on these boats, and then they would distribute it to New York and to Chicago. Imagine driving from Chicago to Atlantic City, them little 1920s cars. Boy, your butt must have been in pain by the time you got to your destination.
Not to mention you have a bunch of illegal merchandise in the back of your truck.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the old days of gambling, whatever. But I used to gamble. Never was like really bad. Like got hung up on it. I did go through a little stint. I actually stayed in Vegas for a little bit. Most people don't know that about me. I spent a little time there and was asked to leave. I'm not going to get into that because I got crossed with some people, and it wasn't a gambling debt or anything like that. I just like to get drunk and get into fights and stuff. And then I came down to Austin and started, working with people that I had gotten in touch with when I was up in Vegas. But I was from here originally, and then I was up in Vegas, and so
your sister was up there too, right?
Yeah, my sister lived there and her husband for a long time. They were from Nellis, the Air Force Base, Nellis. And so, yeah, when I was running stuff up in Area 51, you know what I'm saying? No, I'm just kidding. Seriously, though, I got a lot of weird stories out of Vegas. I got some when I was staying up there for a little bit, when I would go up there and I would visit it quite frequently. And I would hang out for a while and then come back. Probably more than a tourist type person, I guess you could say. I like to go to different places. Texas Station, Fiesta, I like to go to those two casinos. They were off the strip. Fremont was cool. I got to know a lot of people. And I got to meet some pretty unsavory characters there, but I got some pretty cool stories out of Las Vegas. Now, one of the stories kind of ties in with a whole subcategory that I wanted to do about immortals. We've been talking about that one for a while, but we haven't gotten into it because we just have so much other material to cover. We want to do one about ghost vehicles, because there's so many people who've gotten stories. We've got stories about that. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about Paranormal Las Vegas. The main thing I wanted to get was just
shoot. You know what we totally forgot?
Totally forgot the email
and the PayPal and the merchandise. So. If you have any stories and you want to send it to us, just send it to us at doswolfman88@gmail.com, doswolfman88@gmail.com. And if you could appreciate it, or if you could help us out and check out the merch store, we finally have it up. We've already bought a couple hoodies here. We've appreciated everyone who was buying stuff off of it, and we're real happy with the product. So
anybody who wants to just email me if you want a link to the store.
It's also in the description of the video. And,
because that way you can buy stuff and you get something back. I appreciate everyone who donated a little bit of money to help us. A couple people in particular. I wish I had memorized the names or whatever, but there were a couple people in general, in particular, that donated a lot of money.
Yeah, and they definitely helped out
like a big chunk, and I appreciate that. They were nice, very kind, and I will. If you're listening and you're one of those people that donated, and you think you're owed a shirt, well, hit me up and I'll see.
I think it's only fair. They definitely helped us to support us when we didn't have it up.
And we didn't have it up, and so we want you guys to buy the merchandise. That way you can wear the merchandise and
promote our show.
Promote the show, and you get something out of it, and instead of just giving us money, And so I kind of felt like that would be a better way to go than the Patreon and all that, because I don't want. Here's the thing, folks. I don't want people who can't afford. I don't really like the whole buy a special membership and then you get special episodes. And if you don't buy the membership, then you don't get the special episodes, because I want all of our material to always be accessible to those who cannot afford it.
Yeah, it feels exclusive a bit, and it feels like it's just not right. And
it's not right.
I think it's better for us to just have everything that we produce be available to everyone.
Yeah.
And if you want to support the show, then you can, go to our store and, buy whatever you want over there. Something. And that way, you get something out of it instead of just, because this show is, for y'all. We don't do the show, for money, or we don't do the show for anything else. It's a hobby that we like to have, and we enjoy the fact that, you guys like listening to us. So, we don't think that, we should have you guys pay for it.
Yeah. And so I think that the merchandising is going to be the way to go for us, just in the way that, it's going to be hard for some people. They can't, if you're not interested in getting the merchandise and you just want to send the money and to help with the show, that's fine too. We appreciate that you appreciate our work. It's like but we just wanted you to have something for your money. And we also wanted, like I said, we want to keep the show available to those who can't afford, some people, they're struggling just to have the internet up. And so I don't want people who are hurting to feel like, oh, I got to pay for my, whatever. This is, as long as the show can pay for itself, I'm going to keep doing it as best I can. It is kind of tedious trying to get time off sometimes to
but I mean,
to get it done.
Well, we can make do. I mean, we do, and thankfully we do have people who can help us out in the workplace right now. But
like tonight, we got people working, so we're gonna bang this show out. And I guess that was wrong. What happens when you say "without further ado" and then something else comes up? Is that with further ado? Is the ado? Is that what we just did? The ado?
Can we resend that ado? Can we take that back and put it out right now?
Can I have my ado back?
Oh man! Oh no! We just sent that out.
All right, so
anyway, please continue.
Let's do this. No. We had to get that out. I was anxious to get the show started. I
was excited too, and I totally forgot about it.
Jumped the gun on that. So here we go. So we're gonna do one about Las Vegas. And when I was up in Vegas, there were a few people that I would talk to, and there was one place that I like to go frequent and gamble. And there was a hotel, it was not that hotel, wasn't that casino, but I would go and hang out there sometimes. And there was a guy who was a notorious gambler, had been around that area for a long time. And a lot of people know him. But, I mean, he's been deceased now for probably 20 years. But let's see, 2020. Yeah, he's probably been gone for at least 20 years. But he was an older guy. He told me a story one time that there was a buddy of his that used to be a prominent businessman from LA who came out to Vegas and stayed at one of the casino hotels, older hotel. It's not there anymore. It's been torn down. And this gentleman apparently spent a night in a haunted room. And when the guy that told me this story went to go visit his friend, the first night that he was there, after the next day, he said he felt like there was something in his room, and so he asked to be moved, but the hotel was booked up. So he said, okay, it was a 4-day stay, so they told him that they could move him after the second night. But the second night comes, and the next day his friend calls and says, I'm heading back to Los Angeles. And the guy's like, why? And he's like, I just left. I don't care about the book, the booking, the room that I booked, whatever. Says that he had a very nightmarish experience. So what happened was, the first night that he was in this hotel, he kept thinking that there was a woman moving around in his room, like at the foot of his bed. And at one point, his bed shook, and he woke up and he saw like the silhouette of either what was a woman or a long-haired guy at the foot of the bed. And then when he looked, he could see the moonlight coming in through the window. He could see that it was translucent, and he thought, what the heck? So he sat bolt upright, and there was nothing. Nobody was there. It was like he thought, okay, I must be hallucinating. I'm dreaming. I'm just so tired. He'd been up gambling until 2 a.m. But he goes to sleep. Next day he wakes up, and that's when he told his friend, So then he spends one more night in the room thinking, I'm going to switch rooms or whatever, because there was something weird going on. He said that he sees like this little, like what looked like a ball of light that started out like really small, almost like a firefly moving around the room. And then it darted into the bathroom, and he was like, what was that? And he's like, once again, he was bleary eyed, gambled till like 2 a.m. And was confused, didn't know what it was, and thought maybe somebody was playing with him with a flashlight or something. He didn't know what it was. So he got up and he went around the room and looked. Of course, he didn't find anybody, didn't see anything. And then while he's looking under the bed, he looks to his right and he sees like feet, like a woman's feet. And he said that he jumped up and he was like startled, and then there was nothing there. So then he goes later on into the night, watching TV, whatever. He sees what he thinks is a woman peeking around the corner from the bathroom, looking at him. So he looks over, and for a split second, he sees what he thinks is a woman that's like bleeding or something. And he's like, whoa. And so he jumps up, and at that point, he goes and looks in the bathroom. He doesn't see anything, and he's like, something's weird is going on here. So at this point, it's like 3 a.m,
Mm-hmm.
and he's getting more and more anxious, and he can't sleep. So then eventually he starts to get tired. He takes something to help him sleep, and it starts to knock him out. Well, he wakes up about an hour, like an hour into this whole deal. He'd finally started to go to sleep, and then he wakes up almost immediately. Like he just, as soon as he closed his eyes, he was back awake. And the lights that he had the lamp on, the light had been turned off, like it had just gone off while he was asleep. Wakes up and he sees this woman at the end of the bed holding her throat, and blood is pouring down from the wound. And then she opens her mouth, and then he actually wakes up for real. It was like he was awakened in a dream.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up for real. This is what he told this guy. And I was just like, I mean, I'm listening to this, and he goes, now this guy that he's talking about is a very prominent businessman in LA. He's very, like, a lot of people know him. He's been a financing and stuff for years. This was, of course, this happened back in like the 70s or whatever. And so he's like, telling this story, and he's like, this guy is not going to make this up, because, I mean, he's got a reputation at stake, Back then, you talk stories about stuff like that, people think you're crazy. And so he jumps up, starts to pack his bags. He's a little woozy because of what he took to get some sleep. Starts packing his bags, whatever, dude, goes in the, he's like, I'm out of here. He goes in the bathroom, and this thing, whatever it was, he turns around, and it's right there in the mirror, like standing there in the mirror, but he can't see anything behind him. He didn't see it, and it's in the shower, and it's a woman. And she screams at the top of her lungs to the point to where it felt like his face was shaking. And so then he basically falls out of the bathroom, grabbing his stuff, and takes off out the door. And just literally runs down the hallway, freaking out, and left his stuff in the room, and then was gone. Like, he just took off, And according to the friend, this hotel that doesn't exist anymore, he claims that there was a notorious murder that took place in that hotel. He didn't know exactly which room, but he remembers reading something about it. This was going way back, And he said that maybe that was the room that it happened in. And that's the only thing he could think of, was that maybe that's what was going on and why this guy was having these nightmares or whatever.
Yeah. Oh wait, they're not even nightmares. He was awake.
Yeah. Well, this harassing, the nightmares, and then the harassment that was going on from this. So that's that story. That's a pretty crazy one, and yeah. So
found it funny that she had to give him one last boat goodbye, because he was already getting ready to leave, and she was like, "I'm going to make sure you leave."
I don't know if she wanted him to leave so much as maybe she kept pointing to her throat. He did describe that when she opened her mouth and put her arms up.
Mm-hmm.
According to the guy who was telling me the story, that he saw a slash throat.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I assumed.
Yeah.
But
and so she was killed, I guess, in that way. That's the only thing I could think of. I don't know what this thing is or what it was doing. Could have been a demon playing games, but yeah, it was pretty sad that but it was like it was trying to get his attention. Over the years, I have heard stories of different hotels having been haunted with like different,
mm-hmm.
There were people who had claimed that the Stardust, I believe the Sands, different places that had haunted. I can't say exactly, if these rumors are true or what, but I've heard stories of there was a guy that committed suicide. It's a real short one, but he committed suicide in one of the hotels. It's not there anymore because they've tore down a lot of them,
Yeah.
And supposedly he's a gambler that died and he shot himself, I guess because he went and blew all his money and his wife left him or whatever. So he checked out, but he never really checked out. You know what I mean? Like he was still in the room and people would hear him, and sometimes he would punch people, and so
aggressive.
Yeah, they were pretty aggressive. And so I've heard stories over and over again from people who have stayed in different places in Vegas. I'm actually on a group called Haunted Las Vegas, and people will post stories about stuff, and that whole area is pretty weird. Now, if anybody's ever driven the road between, I don't know what highway that is, but I've been on it many times. It's from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, or Las Vegas to Los Angeles. That stretch of road can get pretty lonely. I mean, there's always some traffic on there, but it's such a long stretch, like 3.5, 4 hours. of nothing but desert, you know, and it's very prim. Like if you're going through like into Las Vegas and you go through Prim, there's some weird stories out of that area too. Now, I've been told some weird stories. There was a guy that told me a story. He sent me one, and this is a weird one. Now I was going to go back and look at the threads on this one, but I wanted to add it into the haunted Las Vegas paranormal, whatever. He claims that he stopped on the side of the road, on the road to Vegas. This was right outside of North Las Vegas, and that he needed to urinate. And so he got out of the car. He heard something growling while he was on the side of the road, and he thought, what is this? And he looks, and he sees this thing running towards him out of the darkness in the middle of the desert. And he said it looked like it had really big fangs, and it looked like a cat. And the fangs were oversized, like really big, like almost like daggers coming out of its mouth.
Like a saber-tooth?
Exactly. And so I was thinking, like, you know, I've gotten a couple other stories of these cats, you know, these like, and I was going to save them up and then kind of do one about it. I don't know what they are, if they're a prehistoric relic that's just managed to survive. One of the stories I got was from somebody who was, you know, that happened, it was in the Ozarks, so I'm not going to get into that one, but this cat ran toward him and he was like, oh, you know, shoot.
Yeah.
Except that's not what he said.
Yeah, I mean, I know what he said.
He jumped in the passenger side of his vehicle and was like, and this thing ran up, like right up to the vehicle to where he could see it. He got a good look at it. Said it was like kind of like a leopard, like colored like almost like a leopard.
Mm-hmm.
But it was big and it had short back legs, big long front legs. Classic Smilodon is what I think. And he said that as it got closer to the vehicle, it just sort of faded away. Like it just dissipated, like it just faded into nothing. And so he was...
Wait, so as it was running up and before it actually even touched the vehicle, it started fading
it faded away. And like it slowed down running. And he said it looked very flesh and blood, but as it got towards him, it just sort of like faded away and just disappeared. So, you know, I don't know what that is or what, you know...
I'm gonna have a theory about it, but I just thought of something I saw on TV. Do you believe in like I don't know if this is true or not, but like time relics, where like certain things are just so ingrained into a certain spot that it just happens, you know, at a certain time where that thing will happen over and over again,
like a time loop.
Yeah, like a time loop, except for just like a certain area. I mean, because I saw a show about it, or like a thing on, and it was just a really interesting thing I saw. I don't know, you know, if that's something that actually happens or if it was just a fictional thing that they made up and decided it was like a theory that they had. But, you know, that sounds like something that who knows what that is, but that might be something that it could have been. Like maybe that thing died there and it was like chasing or whatever, and it was just running towards that right there. And at that moment where it disappeared is where it died. Maybe it lived there, you know, in its life or whatever. Yeah. Or it might have just been, you know, who knows what it is. It's such a long stretch of like nothing that is so weird to see stuff out there. And it just makes you think like, well, where could it hide? You know, if it was a flesh and blood animal, it's like where it's nothing but desert out there. And it's not like there's anywhere for it to go. Anyways, I don't mean so, you know, I don't know what that is, but it was near the Mojave National Preserve. I know that much. I know that there was, like, he was stopped on the side of the road, and I think on one side of the road, if I'm remembering correctly, one side is the preserve is on that side. So if something was going to hide, you know, it would hide in a place where there's nobody. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you folks at home listening, y'all can give us your feedback, give us your input and what you think. Yeah. It is, because I'm sure you will anyway, but yeah, it's just one of those. I mean, just give us an idea, because I'm sure as heck stumped as to what it could be. I have no idea. You know, it might disappearing cat like that. It just sounds so bizarre, you know, especially if it looks like a saber-tooth, basically is what you describe it as to me. It was just a cat with big teeth. Well, when it says big teeth, does it mean all of its teeth or just the fangs?
The described the story I got was it was like it had dagger-like teeth. This guy's an older gentleman.
Yeah.
Didn't really tell me, hey, it looked like a saber-toothed cat. He didn't even say that. He just, the way I took it was that's what it was. And he said it happened to him when he was in his teens. Like he was a young guy. So now he's, retired, whatever. But yeah, and his son encouraged him to send the story. Oh, so, it wasn't like someone that I was hanging out with and they, whatever. That's the story that I got. And the information that I got from him was basically like that. Yeah. And I don't know what it was, but I have gotten other stories like that. This isn't the only disappearing cat story I've gotten. I mean, I've gotten stories of cat walking upright. I've gotten stories of cats. I know we covered one about Beaumont, that area in East Texas, where there was a cat, man type creature that was harassing a dude. And then he thinks that, of course it was sicked on him by his father-in-law. But I don't think that's what this is. This sounds like a prehistoric relic. I know that I've talked to people who really believe that these ghost saber-tooths they're real phenomena. Mm-hmm. Like people see them all the time. They believe that there's some sort of like ethereal cat, because a lot of times people see them, and that's 3 now that I've heard, or maybe 4 even that I've heard of. One I read somewhere. Don't quote me. It might have been a magazine or something, but then there was another one that there are 2 others that I got that were sent to me.
Same area or all around?
Not in that area, no. But the big cat thing with the disappearing act and all that is very
magician.
It's not uncommon. Let's put it that way. I don't know much about that area as far as I've driven through there. I've never spent time in that Mojave Desert National whatever. I just driven through there. Like I said, I've never gone and hung out and camped or gone to, whatever. I know that the desert being what it is, that in that national preserve right there, there's not going to be people living there. Now there might be, but of course they're going to get run off by because there's not supposed to be anybody living there. Yeah. So, it's a very desolate area. When you're going through there, and where he stopped, there wouldn't have been any people.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, why would you live out there?
Yeah, and so for me, just it's a very it could be a lonely area, especially at night when you're driving through there, and if you stop and you get out, The thing is, from what he told me though, it wasn't like he had his headlights on, Mm-hmm. And when this thing was coming, he could see it coming out of the darkness, and it was he could see it illuminated. You know what I mean? Yeah. But as it got closer and he jumped into the passenger side of his vehicle, it faded away as it got closer. And
thankfully it did. Could you imagine?
Well, I think when he said it came into the lights when he could see it. Uh-huh. That's when it began to dematerialize. Like as it got closer, and then it just eventually just completely dematerialized. But here's the thing: what if he was able to see it with the lights, but then the lights broke up, and then but it was still there, and it was just invisible. And if he's like, oh, it's gone, so he gets back out of his car, which would have been stupid. I know he didn't do that, but then it jumps on him because here's the thing: invisible stuff, it could still be there, and we know that. Yeah. Even if it's not, you can't see it with your eyes. I'll tell you a story, folks. When I was working security years ago, this didn't happen in Las Vegas, but it happened right outside of Austin. And I've been wanting to tell this story. I believe I might have told it on Vic's show, but I'm not 100% if I told this story to anybody or not. But I was working security one night at Colorado Crossing. Now, Tony, I don't know if you remember Colorado Crossing. I think you did Brackenridge. Brackenridge is where you saw that girl, that weird woman or whatever. Yeah. Colorado Crossing was near Del Valle. And I was working security, and I would have my windows rolled down, and there was a subdivision that was being built. And there were houses and stuff all around. There were only a couple that were occupied, but then just 2 blocks, with the 2 blocks distance, there was an entire another neighborhood that had been built and had been there for a couple of years. So it wasn't like it was in the middle of nowhere and desolate, but it's near the Bergstrom Air Force Base, where, years ago there was a lot of Bigfoot sightings, things like that. When I was sitting there in my truck one night, it was just an innocuous night. There was nothing special about it. Nothing. I was just another night working, and I heard footfall going around my truck, and it sounded like something with claws, like, and at first I thought it was 4-legged. It's what it sounded like, a dog. But then I thought maybe it was 2 legs, but I couldn't make it out, and I kept hearing it go around the truck. And I thought, and there's a house that's occupied just maybe like 30, 40 yards from where I was sitting. I mean, those people were like, they went to bed early, and then they would get up and go to work in the morning. So they were asleep, and this was like 2 a.m. And I was sitting there, I believe this was about 6 years ago. And I was sitting there in my truck, and I was like, what is that? And I just kept hearing it going around my truck. And it was like it was circling the truck. And then at one point, something bumped the truck. And I got out of my truck. Finally, I got out. I just got tired of, and I rolled the windows up, at least most of the way, except for my driver's side window was partway down. Because it really freaked me out. I really thought something was crawling around underneath the truck, and I couldn't see it. And so I started the truck, and I moved it. And it continued when I moved forward about, 20 yards. And
like it was following you?
Like it followed me, yeah. And here's the weird thing. I finally got out of the truck. I said, to heck with this. I got out of the truck, and I looked all around. I didn't see anything. But I did see, this is weird, I saw like the grass, the Johnson grass, right there going toward the model home, where they had the model home. And I saw something part that Johnson grass, and it looked just like something invisible was going through there. So yeah, I don't know what that was. To this day, that was a very weird thing. Nobody else on that side had reported anything weird. Scorpion worked it.
Well, even if they did, they wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah,
really.
Anthony worked it. He never saw anything. Thomas worked it. Nobody ever said, "Hey, I saw something weird at Colorado Crossing." It was just me. And after that day, I always felt creeped out there. I never was totally comfortable at that place. I always felt like there was something there, but it was obviously you couldn't see it.
Yeah, that's like the worst thing. Is like,
yeah, it's invisible, but it sounded like a heavy footfall with claws.
Yeah,
you know how dogs sound on pavement?
On pavement or like on wood or wooden floors when Banjo walks around.
Well, when Banjo walks around, you can hear the on the hardwood. That's how it sounded to me, but it sounded like on pavement, and padded footfall. Like it sounded canine.
It had to be because feline, you wouldn't hear the footfall.
No,
you wouldn't hear the claws.
It was very canine like, and I could hear the claws, and so that freaked me out. And in my mind, I'm going like Invisible Dogman. I don't know, but that leads us into our next story. Now, this one happened right outside of the Holleran Springs area, going into Las Vegas. Now, I say Las Vegas because it's going toward Las Vegas.
Area.
This person was on his way to gamble and blow his kids' college money, as they say. And so he was on his way, him and his wife. They were having a weekend getaway. They lived in California, I think in Bakersfield or something like that. I think it was Bakersfield. And they were going, or maybe it wasn't Baker. I don't know. It was somewhere in California. The cities get mixed up. But anyway, it happened near Holleran Springs area. Now there again, it's near the Mojave Desert area on the way to Las Vegas. And they had a very weird thing happen to them. And I think I've talked about this one before too, but I'm not 100%. But they saw what looked like a very large wolf on all fours run across the road. And then when it got to the end, got to the other side of the highway in front of them, it went up on 2 legs and then kind of jumped. And like at the last moment, it got up on 2 legs and then jumped right out of the way of their car. They turn around, they look back, the wife looked back, and she sees a second one running behind it, much larger than the first one. First one, they said that was when it stood up was probably about 7 foot tall. But this other one was even bigger.
Was it on 2 feet or was it on 4s?
Yeah, that second one they said was like on all 4s, and it did the same thing, and it got up on 2 feet and then back down on all 4s.
Did they hear anything?
No, they were driving.
No. So
it was a very short encounter, but they saw it, and I was just going to throw that one out there because it's on the way to Vegas, and that's what was, that's where they were headed. Don't know what that was, unless you say, hey, it was a Dogman, because they reported it as being Timberwolf looking, and grayish brown, big wolf heads, look like wolves. I mean, that's all you can think of is Dogman, because that's what.
Are there even wolves out there?
That's a good question. I don't know of any wolves out there. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably some red wolves lurking around out there somewhere, but to be that size, to be that big, I don't believe that there would be something that big out there.
You'd have to have a really good diet to be out there and be
to be that.
And what kind of big game can they eat out there? So I mean, that would be an insane sized wolf to be living out there.
Well, there's always been rumors that area has underground whatever. That there's things that can go underground. I don't want to say 100%, but I wouldn't say that it would be a Dogman. More could be a skinwalker. I don't know. That would be my opinion, but I don't want to say that because I don't know 100%. The other thing that happened was another one out near Prim. No, this one's pretty crazy. This guy was driving along the highway going into Las Vegas, and he picked up, he was driving along the road, and he saw a female on the side of the road, very attractive, and she was hitchhiking. And according to him, he was like, went to pick her up, and he normally didn't pick up hitchhikers, but she was a girl in the middle of the night, and it looked like, somebody was going to pick her up, and he would rather him pick her up than somebody that was
had ill intentions.
A deviant, according to this guy. So he goes and he stops, he doubles back, goes back around, picks her up. She gets in the vehicle. He said that she was very beautiful. She looked like she was in her early 20s, had red hair or reddish brown hair. Said that she was very pretty. And he said that when she got in the vehicle, she had a weird smell about her, like an earthy smell. Kind of a musty, earthy smell, like she'd been in the dirt or something. It was very weird. Now, this story is really weird. He says that they started talking, and she gave him a name that it was like she had a sort of an accent, like an Eastern European accent. He said that he gave her a name, and he goes, and for the life of me, I can't even remember it. He's like, I can't remember what it was. It was like it started with an A or something, and it was weird, and I can't even pronounce it, And he said she said that her family were immigrants from Europe. And as they're driving down the road, she starts to moving her legs around, saying she has to use the bathroom really bad. And he said that they had only been driving for about 15 minutes, and she's like, can you pull over? Can you pull over so I can use the bathroom? And so he says, okay. So he pulls over, and she's like, do you mind? You don't mind if I get out and whatever, squat, whatever. And he's like, go ahead. I won't look, I'm going to be a gentleman, whatever. And she's like, oh, that's cool. But she kept reaching over and like kind of touching his arm and being flirtatious and stuff. And he didn't know what the deal was with her. Was she a prostitute or what was her deal,
Did she even explain why she was out there?
Yeah. Well, she said that she was just trying to get from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, and she'd been hitchhiking. This he said was in the early 90s when this happened.
No, I mean, it's not unheard of.
Yeah, it's not unheard of. And so he was just, but that desert, is just, that's a foreboding place, I guess. And so he pulls off the side of the road, and this is where things get really weird. After he pulls off the side of the road, she turns to him and tells him, I'm hungry. And he's like, okay, well, I don't really have anything to eat. He goes, I have like a banana and and as he's reaching back to his backpack to see what he can get, she grabs his arm and bites, like sinks her teeth into his arm, like bites him.
Yeah.
And he pulls back, and when he does, there's like a visible puncture marks, whatever. He looks up, and according to him, this woman's mouth was full of teeth, and it had completely changed from the beautiful young girl to this weird looking malevolent thing where the nose was like kind of joined with the top lip, and the teeth, it was like just like venom, like it had the teeth like venom.
Yeah.
And he said that when he was told by someone to check out my show that I had posted on one of the groups, one of the supernatural groups, and that he listened to the vampire show, and for years he wondered what it was. And now when he listened to that show, that's what made him think that's, this could be what it was. Well, he starts to like she jumps on him and he starts to struggle with her, but she was overpowering him and she was probably half his size. He said he probably weighed about 220 at that time. He was fit, said he was ex-military, whatever. He started to kick her, like to get her off of him. And he kicked her so hard that the door opened, like the passenger door opened. Yeah. And she just lunged back in at him and started going at him again and was clawing him up. And he saw these weird looking, nasty, like nails that looked like the way he described it. Can't remember the way he said, like claws, but he used a word. I can't remember. But he said that the nails were like hooked, almost like for grabbing, and then he had like a sweater on or whatever, and she had like torn it, like pulled
talons.
It. Yeah, talons. There you go. I was trying to think of the word, and she pulled it, like talons, and they hooked into his sweater and were pulling, and then she was dragging him out of the vehicle, and then the last ditch effort to keep from being dragged out into the desert, he grabbed the passenger seat, and just held on for dear life, and it ended up like wrenching his right arm, his shoulder. Mm. And she had pulled off one of his shoes and he was being drug out. He thought, I'm going to die. This woman creature thing, whatever she is going to kill me and she's going to eat me, whatever. And he fully thought that she was trying to eat him. And he said that the skin was gray and became kind of scaly, but not totally like a lizard, but it just looked like really old skin. Leathery, yeah, I guess you could say. I'm trying to think of the way he described it. It's hard to like put the words into it, whatever. The impression that I got was that it was like somebody who had instantly turned into another creature that was much older than. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's what the impression that I got. What he was.
That's what I'm thinking of, like very dry, older skin. That's very
old,
leathery,
but I can't remember the exact words he used or whatever. But anyway, it's been a long time since I've spoken. Not a long time, but months. And so the guy was being pulled out of the vehicle, and his pant was coming off. Like this guy was hanging on, and at this point, she went to like literally just grabbed him by his private parts. Oof. And he was like holding her hand, trying to keep her from squeezing in that area, whatever. And he kept the whole time she kept shrieking, like it was like this weird shrieking noise. It sounded almost like a bird mixed with like I guess the only thing I could think of, like if you took because he said it was making a whistling noise, like, and he couldn't describe how it was, like a turkey call or a deer call. You use the whistle, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say, because he said it sounded like a cross between a bird and a cat. So I was trying to think of a way to reproduce that noise that she was making, but I just couldn't figure it out. But
it's inhuman, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's more sort of inhuman, and he said that it was like just screeching, and he was like screaming and pleading with it and whatever. And he said that the eyes had reddened. They were completely black. There was no like you couldn't see any white in the eyes. It was just completely black.
It was red.
Like and the middle was red. Yeah, in the middle. And he said that this thing had like this weird tongue that it was flicking out back and forth, coming out. The tongue, he said, was black. And so I know it was just very and it was a very very creepy story, very creepy encounter. So what he claims happened was he was not a religious person. He was not a believer in Christ or God, but at that moment he began to pray and he began to scream and he was like, Jesus Christ, save me. This is what he claims. And he said that he was like, if you're there, help me. And he said that this thing just kind of backed up, and whether it was a coincidence or it was actually his prayers, or this thing just got tired, or maybe the prayers made it get tired, whatever. He said it just got tired of it. Like, it's like it just got tired and let go. And it like stopped for a minute and was just kind of like looking at him. And then it got down on all fours and kind of crawled around to the front of the vehicle. And then he closed the door of the passenger side and got into the driver's side. And at that point it popped up on the driver's side and began to open that door. And as luckily the engine was still going, he just like floored it. And he almost ran off the road. He said he almost wrecked going off the road, and he got back on the road. And he said that right when he started to get back on the road, an 18-wheeler was going by and he almost got hit by the 18-wheeler and it was like honking at him, whatever. And he said that this thing had like gone back down into like the ditch and then it like was gone. Like he didn't see it. And so he drove off, but he could hear this shrieking noise, you know, because the window on the passenger side was like just a little bit partway down.
Mm. So you could still hear it?
Yeah, so he could hear it shrieking, like, and it just, he said
obviously
it was
annoyed.
terrifying, like, incident, you know, like, I just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he tries to be a good guy, you know, give this lady a ride, and she ends up being some kind of vampire witch.
Some sort of demon witch, vampire.
Tries to eat him, like, holy crap.
Yeah, and he said that in his life, that was the only weird thing that's ever happened to him, but that was a doozy. So
and that's definitely the weirdest as it gets. I mean, come on.
Doesn't get much worse than that. I mean... So anyways, I hope I told the story as best, you know, because when I spoke to this guy, it's been months since I talked to him, and I was trying to relay it as best I could because of the way that he was explaining it to me. Mm-hmm. And I was on post when I was talking to him, and I couldn't record what he was saying. But yeah, I don't know what that was. And thank you, sir, for sending me that story, but that was a very creepy one. That one was pretty disturbing. I don't know what I would do if it was me. Probably use my Herculean strength to throw it into the atmosphere and then just drive off.
I would use my special form, curl into ball fetus, and roll around away from it.
And hope that maybe Banjo could bite its ankles and try to sacrifice himself. Here, take him, and you.
I don't think I would ever sacrifice Banjo, to be honest.
I hope not. Look at this guy.
I think I'll take the hit.
Do you hear that, Anthony? What a good guy. He don't think he would ever sacrifice Banjo.
I thought it over before, and I was like,
"Oh my gosh,
it's not really for me. I'm not for it."
He's the first line of defense. You just throw your little snack-sized dog. Oh man, that's terrible.
I mean, what couldn't you do? I mean, I bet you that's the last time he's ever picked anyone up off the road.
Yeah,
it makes you.
And sir, I'm going to say this, and this is no knock on you, but you know what people are going to think. They may think that he tried to attack some girl and she whooped his butt. That is not, I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm saying that's what some people are going to think. Maybe it was just some girl.
Yeah,
and then he made up some story to his friends that, hey, I got beat up, but it was and I'm not mocking him or making fun of him. I'm just saying that that's what people are going to think. But, you know, when I talked to this individual, folks, it was serious business. Like he talked like this really happened to him. It really scared him. He was a young guy when it happened. You know, he was like in his 20s, and you know, now, you know, he's in his late 40s, whatever. Yeah, you got to wonder. I mean, like, I don't know.
Did the bite or did anything scar up? Or like...
Yeah, I asked him about that. And he said it healed up, you know, pretty nicely. It just looks like he's got a little
missing
two puncture marks that are kind of faded. Because there were two prominent fangs, according to him, that were sticking out in the front. And he said everything in the mouth was jagged little teeth. Mm-hmm. And it looked like the face, everything morphed. Kind of reminds you, like when we did the vampire story. Now, I've had this vampire story for a while, and I wanted to throw it in there, but we didn't. We ran out of time. And then I thought, I have all these different stories going into the Las Vegas area and the desert and all that, and we'll just put it all together in one big Las Vegas paranormal potluck. I don't know what that was. I can't tell you what that was. I have no idea.
I mean, it sounds like a vampire, but
some sort of vampire.
I mean, obviously, I don't know. I mean,
I think it's harder for people too to talk about those encounters. Whereas like Dogman has really taken off, and people they're more comfortable talking about, hey, I saw this dog on two legs, whatever. I went to the AT&T store to get my wife's phone replaced because they're not going to be supporting because it's an Apple. And I'm not going to be supporting that type of phone anymore. So we had to go in there and get her another iPhone. And she got a pretty nice one, you know. But, I mean, she actually didn't really want it. She wanted to keep the one she had. But we ended up going in there, and she's kind of like not really sold on the 5G thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm not either.
Yeah, well, you know, so she wasn't really happy about it. But the guys that worked there were really nice, and they were really cool. And so Jose and Eric, these two guys, really nice guys, gentlemen, that helped us out. And one of them just subscribed to my channel, you know, and said that he would listen, whatever. And he sent me a story, not recently, but he also told me a story when we were in there, when we were talking about, because we looked up on this iPad, we looked up iTunes, and we typed in paranormal, and Paranormal Roundtable popped right up on iTunes. And so we got some pretty good reviews on there too, by the way. But this guy was looking at it, and then I told him about my show, and I told him that it started out when I was on Dogman Encounters, and then just kind of went from there. And he said, just point blank, he's like, my grandmother, or he said my mother, when she was in Mexico, saw a thing that looked like a wolf on two legs. And so one day I'll get into that. But, it's so prominent.
Yeah.
The people just like, you can go to the HEB, that's our local grocery store here, folks.
In Texas,
Texas.
We don't know.
But you can go to the HEB grocery store. You can go to Whole Foods and just be in the
yeah, it seems like
vegetables
it's a lot.
and be picking out a vegetable and talk to somebody and they go, oh yeah, I've seen Bigfoot. It's very prominent. It's very,
it seems like it's easier for that to make win like a ghost or even Dogman.
Dogman is getting to where it's not as taboo. People talk about it. Or not as crazy. I saw a werewolf. People like, really? 15, 20 years ago.
They don't like give you this ridicule look. Like they're just eyes glossed over. Like they're not even paying attention to you anymore. Yeah. I mean, because I've seen it before. But I mean, it seems like it's happening a lot less. But like you said, this
subject, I remember I think Linda Godfrey in one of her books saying that people don't see vampires, but they see werewolves. Well, that's because the whole Dogman thing is taken off. More people are talking about it. I've heard stories of vampires since I was young.
Yeah,
not around my hometown. My hometown is very much a stronghold for werewolves. Yeah. And that, but but now it's I've heard a lot of stories, like when Zane was over in New Orleans. That's my brother's son.
Yeah, definitely New Orleans, definitely.
And we've heard stories El Paso, and we've heard stories out of now this one. That's the only one I got in that area. It was a vampire. If you want to classify it as a vampire, I don't know what that is. Now, I don't know what these things are. I don't want to say they're vampires, but that's the closest thing I can come to saying what they are, is a vampiric type entity. It wants to drink blood or eat you. I don't know what, but
because it's weird that it bit him,
Yeah,
but if it had all those teeth, it would have definitely that seems like something that would tear, Mm-hmm. But when it first bit him, it left only the 2 puncture marks.
Yeah, according to him, that's all it got. Like when it went down and he looked and his arm was behind the seat, it bit him. It just kind of grazed over the top of his arm, and but it left 2 marks.
Mm-hmm.
It caught his arm and he pulled back really quick and was like, "What the heck?" Because it was just he was in shock, because he said that he saw her head go toward his arm and he thought, what is she doing? And it just didn't react. And then it's boom. And then, he pulled his arm back and it was bleeding. And that's when everything changed. And, I guess it's good in that they stopped, because if it would have attacked him while they were driving, it would have probably just wrecked and he would have died. And
that's probably why it has to stop, though, because it could probably get hurt.
So that's what I was thinking. This thing must not be, and that's a good point that I wanted to bring up, folks, is that this thing must not be a completely supernatural creature. I mean, it is able to do things that humans can't do, obviously,
mm-hmm.
but it isn't if it's asking to stop, because if it was just some sort of supernatural being, ethereal being that could manifest itself physically and then go back to being a spirit, which I think some of these things are, then it would not have needed to stop.
Yeah, because
to do what it was doing.
Yeah, the only reason why you would need to stop is that you're worried you're going to crash.
Mm-hmm.
A slight turn of the wheel and the car could flip, and then all of a sudden you could get hurt also.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean that's the only thing I can think of is I need to stop so to make sure that it could attack you in a very confined space,
mm-hmm.
very closed off space at a standstill.
It wasn't very big either. He said it was 5'6" or 5'5", something like that. Here's another theory I'm gonna throw out there we could postulate on. Rake. What if it's a rake? What if the rake is a shapeshifter? Now, folks, I got a bunch of rake stories. They've poured in since I've talked about it. And, who knows, man? I mean, this thing could have been a rake. Maybe it's a mimic, a shapeshifter, a rake type. I don't know. I mean...
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the rake. I mean, I've seen images of it when we talked to whoever about the show.
You're talking about Ernest?
Yeah, when we talked to him.
He's one of the interviews we did.
Yeah, so I mean, I looked up some stuff about it, but Yeah.
And he didn't call it a rake either.
Yeah, we told him.
We told him that that's what it looked like. And since then, we've talked to 2 or 3 people who've said rake, but not because that's all they can.
Well, even you didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was until I was like, I did some research on it, several months back, and I kind of came to the conclusion that that's what they're talking about. Because I don't like to preface a story with this was a gargoyle, this was a dogman, this was a rake, this was a vampire. Because I don't know what these things are. I'm just going by putting them in a category of description, and then I pull the threads and I go back and I look, and lo and behold, that's where it's at. Wow,
that's what it is. Well, I can't believe you're profiling these animals, these creatures.
Folks, I'll tell you another one. I'm going to do a show about flying humanoids pretty soon, and so I don't want to give this one away, but it was they're Pahrump, and it was a flying humanoid that very, very brief encounter though, but I'll probably go back over it when I go through the flying humanoids. It went over the top of someone's vehicle, and they heard something scrape along the top of the vehicle. They saw what looked like a grayish being, very Mothman looking type being. Had big red eyes and like no head. The way they described, like it didn't have a head. And when they pulled into the place where they were headed, they pulled off in Pahrump, and they got out. They looked, and it was like there were claw marks over the top of the vehicle. And they said it happened very quickly. Maybe I'll revisit that one just to try to, because I'm going to use it as to give it. Forget what the words are. Whenever you're talking about another creature and you're using a
reference,
reference to kind of my mind's not working today. But that's one thing that was weird is that I had another encounter that was in another part of the country that was very similar to that. Like this thing grazed over the top of their vehicle. Sounds very Mothman-ish, This wasn't like in Las Vegas, but it was in the area around Las Vegas. And now here's the last story I'm going to tell, and it's pretty brief, but it's happened in Las Vegas. The hotel is still there. It's on the Strip. So I don't really want to say it, like the name of the hotel, because I don't know what kind of trouble I could get into by talking about. So this very much sounded like a Mothman type creature too, and it made go back in reference to the Pahrump incident. This story was given to me. This kid, the guy said he was 12 years old, and they were staying in a hotel, and the kid's stuff had all ended or whatever, so he went up into the hotel into the tower or whatever, and his parents were down there spending all the Christmas money. And he literally, joking, I'm not joking. He literally told me, he goes, dude, I don't know. It was like in November. And he goes, and we had a very crappy Christmas. And he goes, and I remember driving home and my dad being angry. Yeah, he said that we lived in Arizona and my dad was like on that trip home. My dad was like angry. And he said all the way back to Phoenix, like his dad was complaining and like very crotchety. And his mom saying stuff like, well, that's not my fault. You're the one that blew the money. And then Christmas came and it wasn't very good. And he was like, oh, looking back on it years later, he's like,
figured it out.
They gambled. Yeah, they gambled it. And he said that it was a fun trip for the most part, but then that was not fun. But he said that him and his little sister and it was his older cousin were with them and his aunt. But the aunt and the parents were downstairs gambling, and they were up in the tower. And his cousin says, what is that? And they look out the window and they see this thing swooping back and forth over the night sky. And that it swooped right by their window of the hotel. And it turned like sideways to where they could see the full body profile of it. And he said that it looked like a fuzz ball. That's the best way he could describe it, with bat wings and 2 big red eyes at the top of the head. But there was no head. Like you couldn't really see a head. Like it was like the body was part of the head. Like it was, which also sounds like a Mothman. Very strange. And he said that he saw little weird looking legs. They were kind of curled up underneath the body. And then he said that eventually it flew kind of off into the distance and landed on the top of another building. And then it was gone.
Huh.
So what?
How high up are they?
I think he said that they were like, but of course this is a kid's memory, But he said that if he remembers correctly, they were like 15 stories up, something like that. He don't remember exactly because this happened when he was a little kid and he's in his 30s now. But I mean, you're sitting there going like, what is that? What is that? And that happened in Las Vegas. You know?
Did you just describe the color or anything else?
Yeah, it was gray.
Gray. Okay.
Grayish black. And he said that it was right by the window. And that he said that whenever, he thought that other people would have seen it, you know, whatever, but there was nobody that talked about it. Nobody said anything, you know.
Well, grayish black, if you're looking from down.
Camouflage, you know.
Yeah, it's great camouflage.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have to be, like you said, facing it directly to be able to see it head on like that.
He said that it looked like 2 red dots floating out in the night, and that's what he draw his attention to. But it was the eyes. Yeah. That's what I think. It was the eyes. That was the eyes until it got by the window. Then he was like, "Oh, that has to be what it was," you know. And so, I mean, but I immediately, when he said 2 red dots flying around, I thought, "Oh man, this could be a Mothman type creature." And folks, I'm not saying it was Mothman or a Mothman. I'm just saying that that's what it sounds like.
No. Well, I am. It's definitely a Mothman.
Definitely Mothman.
I'm going to go ahead and put my stamp of approval on Mothman on this one.
I'm going to call it Butterfly Man, just to be different. But folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. And I hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
Sorry that my brain was not working completely like is you know.
Yeah, we were a bit slow today. I could feel it.
Yeah, we were sluggish.
Yeah, but I mean, I still thought we did okay. I thought it was a pretty good show.
Well, you're patting yourself on the back and you don't even know. Wait till we get the blistering comments on YouTube.
I'm not going to look at them on this show. I'm not going to be honest.
People going, I wish Shaw was there, not that guy Tony. We haven't actually had any of those yet, but folks, feel free to criticize if you would like. Tony, if you criticize me, I will show up at your house. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, criticize me so I can feel better about myself.
And then I will take your small SUV and throw it into the atmosphere.
Makes me feel good that you guys care so much to talk about me in a bad way.
Yeah. He needs it.
I do.
He feeds on it like the weird creature out in the desert.
So folks, the
moral, exactly. The moral to the story is, folks, if you're out in the desert near Nevada or in Las Vegas or outside of Las Vegas, don't stop for hitchhikers. Don't stop to use the bathroom. Don't stop.
Yeah, just keep going. I mean, it seems like that's what happens is like as soon as you stop, something happens.
Mm-hmm. And then when you get into Las Vegas, then you will probably be attacked by Mothman or a ghost.
Yeah, but at least you're in Las Vegas. It's better than, you know, middle of the road.
Being killed out in the middle of nowhere, right?
Hey, quick pro tip. If you're going through the desert, just take a bottle with you.
Exactly. Don't even stop, man. Yeah. Don't even stop. You see a pretty hitchhiker, don't stop. So that's all the time we have for tonight. I'll see you guys later. PRT out.